Good evening. Hello. For those of you who may not know me, I'm Andrew Burke, the Chief Executive and Artistic Director of the London Sinfonietta, which is a job that I hold with a great deal of pride. And it's a great pleasure to welcome you to the second of our Pioneers events, where we're able to share with you the expert skills and knowledge and passion for new music that's held by one of our principal players. On this occasion, that's Tim Gill, our principal cellist. Hello, Tim.
Good evening. Hi.
So those of you who may have joined us when we did this with Michael Cox before Christmas will know the format. If you don't, we're going to be chatting for about an hour, but very much with musical performances breaking up the chat, presented by Tim and his cello, which is currently out of shot. Although what's in shot is a pigeon I see on your radiator.
Sorry about that. Yeah,
Not real. No.
there's a long story behind that, which I won't.
Okay, right, we won't.
Not really.
And just as a bit of housekeeping then, I think many of you will be logged on to the Zoom function that we've set up for this, and there's a Q&A button on the bottom bar, I think, of your screen. And if you want to ask questions at any time, just type into that button or that page and it will show up. I'll be able to read that and put the question to Tim. In fact, if there's anybody there now, it might be a very useful thing for you, a few of you, just to say hello. You know, I'm here.
Raise a hand.
And at least raise a hand. Then we know we're not just doing this for our own benefit. I'm sure there are people here. Very kindly, some of you confirmed you'll be joining in. Towards the end, any unanswered questions, I'll make sure. Thank you. Hello, Regis. It's nice to see you here this evening.
Hi, Regis.
Towards the end, we'll answer any unanswered questions and make sure that any of your queries to Tim are resolved. But do feel free along the way to show your appreciation just by saying what you thought of the music or even his performance, which I'm sure would only ever be an excellent.
Be kind.
Yes, exactly. So we are very pleased to welcome you again. This is an exclusive event for people who support the organisation, the Pioneers. And after it's finished, we do archive it on YouTube for a bit, and we'll send the link to the rest of the Pioneers who couldn't join us live. But thank you for turning up. Tim, this is really an opportunity for us to get to know you a bit better, as well as to hear some great music. And so I'm going to ask you a few questions about your background to start with, and your training, and how you kind of got to be the cellist you are, because your skill set and what you do is really quite unusual, and the repertoire you take on wouldn't be the first choice for many of your professional colleagues who play in other symphony orchestras, I imagine. So how did you get drawn to this, and where did you study?
Well, I had the sort of problem which faces a lot of students, I suppose, who have just done A-levels, of whether to go to university or to music college. And I guess I was pushed in the university direction by my father, who went to Cambridge. So I applied there and managed to get a place. But before I went there, I had a year studying in Paris with a Swiss cellist called Dmitri Markovich at the École Normale. Which is a very famous school for contemporary musicians, because Nadia Boulanger taught there. Lots of eminent composers went there, like Copland and Carter, all sorts of people. Obviously Messiaen was there, I think. So I had a year there, just kind of, I suppose, building up myself cellistically. And then I went to Cambridge, where there was an incredible sort of mix of people there, both musically and in other fields. So I got to meet a lot of very interesting people, very composers there, performed some of their works, and I suppose that's really where my interest in contemporary music started, I suppose. And then that continued on to, I had a couple of years at the Academy in London, and it just kind of continued. I suppose it's always sort of been there with me. What was great, I think what's very helpful is that we place a great emphasis on sight reading in this country, and that was particularly the case at university, actually, because I found myself there with doing like sometimes 2 or 3 concerts a week, different concerts a week. So it's a bit like being an unpaid freelancer, and having to sort of get to grips with a totally new program each time, and you're forced into being able to sight read, I suppose, and the sort of the amount of notes that come at you, which are sort of unknown when you're tackling contemporary music. I think you just need to be able to sort of have shortcuts into that, and it really helps to be quick in that way. So it was a great sort of training, I guess, perhaps even better than going to music college.
Yeah. And when you were studying, were you aware of the Sinfonietta as an ensemble that was playing the music you were also tackling at university, or the style of music you were playing?
Yeah, I was aware of it. I was definitely aware of that. Because there was very much a connection with Cambridge. My wonderful predecessor, Chris Van Kampen, was there. Tony Pay and David Atherton. Of course, that's where I think they all met and formed the idea of the group, as it were. Then so yeah, it was always in the periphery of my vision, as it were. But then obviously I got to know it when I started freelancing and made my connection, particularly with Chris. That was some years after I left university, I guess. Yeah.
And when you first entered the profession, were you drawn immediately to playing contemporary music as a freelancer, or was it your ambition, like many players, to get a job with an orchestra and build your experience of repertoire?
Well, I think it was, I mean, I was drawn to. I mean, one of the first sort of breaks I got was a concert with the Park Lane Group, which, as you may know, they put on a series of, or used to. I think they still do actually, a series of concerts in January to sort of young performers, and it's exclusively 20th, 21st century music now, and that was my first concert. I often think I actually got muddled up in the audition process because Philip Shepherd, who's another great cellist, contemporary of mine, did an audition the same year, and I did an audition on solo cello and played lots of kind of solo pieces, and Phil did an audition on with a pianist. And for some reason they switched us round, and my concert was with a pianist, and I got to play some nice juicy pieces like the Prokofiev Sonata, and poor Phil had to do sort of Della Piccola and Xenakis and stuff like that. So that was amusing, shall we say. He probably doesn't remember that, but yeah. So that was, I got into it there, I suppose, and I played some really interesting stuff by people like Edwin Roxburgh. I can't remember who else now, actually. What's his name? Stevenson, the Scottish composer. Sorry, I should have looked it up. But it was a really great experience, and to play in the Purcell room, at the sort of tender age of 25 was quite a big deal for me.
So, well, thank you for that introduction to how you came to the career the beginning of your career you've now got.
Yeah.
Could you perhaps introduce your first piece of music that you're going to play for us tonight, which is by Hans Werner Henze, called Serenade, a composer who has a very strong association with the Sinfonietta over many, many years, not least with the commission that he wrote for us in 1973 called Voices, which is played many, many times by us and around the world. And also I reminded myself, looking back at our notes, that there was a piece by him called Apollo Hyacinthus, which was part of the program of the first ever concert we played in the QEH on the 24th of January 1968. So it dates back right to his association with the group dates back to the very first concert we ever gave. But tell us more about Serenade.
Yeah, so I'm going to play just a couple of very short movements from his Serenade for solo cello, which was written in 1949. Sorry, I just pick up my cello. I mean, Henze was, I particularly wanted to include some Henze because I I think one of the first dates I did with the London Sinfonietta was recording Henze's Ondine with Ollie Nussen. Ollie had a sort of big contract with Deutsche Grammophon, and it was, well, rather sadly actually, it was a time when Chris Van Kampen was just started becoming ill, and I got a phone call, I think the morning of the sessions. I was sort of said, would you mind being principal for these sessions? So I thought, oh, okay. And then I came along, sort of catapulted into the hot seat, and then I sort of turned over the first page. There was this massive cello solo, so it was a bit of a kind of baptism of fire. Well, it was an enjoyable one, I have to say. But Henze's always intrigued me, and I think what's interesting about this music is that he writes in a style which is atonal. I think this is one of the things which faces all composers of music these days. What language to choose. So the two pieces I'm going to play are actually serial. So they're using Schoenberg's 12-tone system, but he makes them sort of more, shall we say, palatable, recognizable by choosing forms which are sort of recognizable. So there's a pastorale and vivace, which is a sort of very it's a very kind of boisterous 3/8 movement. So even though the language is difficult, shall we say, the forms are kind of recognizable, and that's what I love about Henze, I guess. Anyway, I'll play the two movements. They're very short.
Bravo, Tim.
Thank you.
Wonderful opening. It seems like you really enjoy playing them. Is it well written for the instrument? Does it allow you to kind of move around the instrument very easily and well?
They're very well written, and it's a really good introduction, particularly for students, for my students, to contemporary music, I guess, because it's something that they can get their teeth into cellistically. But the language is novel and difficult, I guess.
Yeah. We've already had one question from Regis, who asks, what is the work that you turn to when you feel fragile or in need of comfort? What do you play then? And alternatively, what is the work or works you loathe? The stuff you put in room 101 that you'd never like to hear again.
Oh, wow. Well, that's quite a big question. Well, I guess I would have to turn to one of the older composers of when I'm feeling fragile, and that would be Schubert. I think there's something very hard to pin down about his music, but it seems so simple, and yet it can, tear you apart. And I always find that very, very moving, and difficult, I guess, if I'm feeling fragile. But it's something that I go to, definitely. What do I put in room 101? I don't know, actually. I mean, I like a really wide range of music, and I think most music has something to offer. I guess I don't like the sort of doctrinal stuff so much, where people are sort of making a point for the sake of their own sort of beliefs. Perhaps also I'm not a massive fan of minimalist music, partly because I find it harder to play. I think not that it's not very effective, which it is, but I find it less satisfying to play, I suppose, because you can only kind of go wrong with minimalist music. It's very hard to bring anything to it as a performer, I suppose. It's a very selfish way of looking at it, but there we are.
A valid point of view, nevertheless. So just move on to the next piece now. So you're playing a piece by Elliot Carter called Fragment. Elliot Carter, again, a composer who had a long relationship with the Sinfonietta, not least through his friendship with various members of the administration, but also the conductor Oliver Nussen, and various pieces he wrote for us and pieces that we championed of his. So a long-standing partnership. Tell us about Fragment and why you've chosen it for tonight.
Figment. I've always been drawn to Carter's music, actually, ever since I first heard his cello sonata when I was at university, played by Ralph Kirschbaum and Peter Frankel. And there was something, it was this sort of combination, I suppose, between a really strong sense of structure and these sort of emotional outpourings, which seem to sort of sit with each other very, very easily. They almost come out of each other. I've always sort of admired him, I suppose, as someone who's really just written the music that he wanted to write. I think with this piece, you see some really interesting things which are quite complicated, I suppose, for a listener maybe to grasp, but the way he does them is so clear. So he has this technique called metric modulation, which is basically where you have the sense, by dividing up the beat, you have the sense that there are lots of different tempos going on at the same time. Obviously, that's a bit more difficult with a solo piece, or at least for one sort of kind of solo line piece. But he still manages to do it. So you get these quite sort of long, drawn out, expressive moments. I'll just play one of them though. Those by dividing the beat up with something which is faster, and he keeps on sort of inserting these bits, so you get a bit which goes, so it gets like a kind of faster tempo, and then he reverts back to the other tempo. It's a very kind of clever way of kind of developing the music. And then harmonically they're so strong. Sorry, do stop me if this is getting too technical, but although it's it's basically atonal, you get these sort of tonal centers, and he presents all of them in the first two bars. If I may, just play the first two bars, where you get these sort of nuggets of themes. So 4 or 5 of them, in fact. And that last chord, the C major chord, is something which he gravitates back to at the end of the piece, almost sort of against the music's will. He sort of comes back to this C major and then sort of gets drawn back again. So you get a really strong sense of structure I think, but at the same time, it's really, really expressive, I think. Anyway, I hope you enjoy it.
Bravo, Tim.
Thank you.
What an extraordinary piece.
Yeah.
Played so brilliantly. Well done.
You get that sort of sense of improvisation too with it.
Yeah.
Just occurred to me then. Yeah.
I'm always curious when I see you and other principals playing something that's so virtuosic. You must put a lot of time into learning them, but then how long will that piece stay with you? I mean, if you went back to it 2 years later, is it still basically there, or do you have to start as if from scratch?
I think it's like sort of, you know, dusting off a layer of dust. It's sort of it's like it's sort of at first it seems, oh my God, how on earth did I do that? You know, but once you start just kind of scraping away some of the debris of time, then it's, you know, there's hopefully a solid basis there. It depends how well you learn it, I suppose, in the first place.
Yeah.
But I think also, I mean, I noticed with this piece and also with Simon's piece that I'm playing later that you definitely have a sense of a sort of journey with it. So when you come back to something, it feels like a different piece of music. You know, it's kind of grown somehow, or you've changed, and that's the sort of exciting thing, I suppose, about coming back to pieces. You know, that they feel different.
Yeah. Robert McFarland has typed a question. Hello, Robert. Nice to see you here, or to know you're watching. Tim, can you talk a bit about your cello? Where it's from? How old is it? Why did you choose it and find it the instrument that's special for you?
This cello is Italian. It's from Cremona, so it's by Ruggieri, who was one of the kind of finest makers. He was a little bit before Stradivarius. If it means anything to people, it worked in Amati's workshop. So the cello is the reason I could afford it. Obviously, these instruments are incredibly expensive. Is that the back is not original? So if I show you the back, that is not. Although it looks very nice, it's not actually by Ruggieri. So these are what we call composite instruments, and it probably halves their value. But it means that, you know, I have a wonderful cello to play on, because it sounds like Ruggieri, but it's half the price. So it's a good deal. But yeah, it actually belonged to my, it's another Sinfonietta story actually, it belonged to my old cello teacher. And I was coming to do, Andrew, I think this was before your time actually, but there was a project where we recorded the entire works of Jerome Kern. So all the musicals, I'm not sure if you were around then.
I knew they were on record though.
Okay, yeah, and the current cello that I was playing on collapsed somehow, had a nervous breakdown, so I had to take it into the repairers. So I had these Sinfonietta sessions that afternoon. I said, what can I play on? So I phoned up my old teacher and she said, well, you could play on mine if you want, but it's, you know, you won't like it because it's set up really badly with gut strings and everything. And I said, well, let me play it. I was desperate by that stage. And I played one note on it, I think. I thought, oh my God, this is amazing, you know. And it was just like, it was the first time I played it ever, and it just felt absolutely right, you know. So there was then a period of time where I tried to persuade her to sell it to me, and she wasn't very keen on parting with it, but she did eventually relent, and. Yeah, I'm very, very happy with it. I'm very lucky to have such a great instrument. I've kept the gut strings too, interestingly, which is not everyone agrees with, particularly for contemporary music, but I just find they help the instrument to to breathe better.
Yeah. And Susan Sturrock has asked a question. You perform and speak so persuasively, Tim. So, and I agree with that. And it comes across very well through Susan's computer screen. But how much do you miss the live audience? And what do you do to keep the immediacy and energy going in performance when you're playing online?
Yeah, I miss it very much. Miss it very much. I did one concert. Sorry, I'm about to be attacked by my cat, so I'm sorry. This is one of the things that you don't get in a concert hall. I did one live concert before the last lockdown, and with an audience there, and that was just such a kind of amazing experience. You know, I've forgotten what it was like to play to an audience, and I think you know, connecting with people in the same space is just so important, and in all sorts of ways, you know, but particularly for me musically, I think it makes you play differently, makes you perform in a different way, and you just get that sort of buzz and excitement, which obviously I'm trying to get now, and obviously I am getting it to a certain extent, you know, but it's not the same, certainly, and hope we can get back to it soon.
But at least there's a timetable. It seems as if we can start planning more
Yes.
with more security now about returning. And one of the people who's helped us a great deal during this period to connect with our audiences has been Zoë Martlew, who's been presenting some of our World Premiere Wednesdays Sinfonietta short events. She's fantastically good at that presenting thing, but of course that's just one of the many things she does. She's a cellist. Many of you will have seen her play on stage with us as part of the Sinfonietta cello section from time to time, and also she's a composer, and the next piece is by her called Salat Babiya, and it's a rare piece, or a unique piece, or an unusual piece in the sense the whole of it is pizzicatos, isn't that, Tim?
Yes, that's right. So I'll be putting my bow down for this. It's based on an Iraqi prayer. So it imitates the sound of the oud, which was like a sort of ancient lute. So just uses a range of pizzicato techniques very effectively, and obviously you can tell that Zoe's a wonderful cellist, you know, which she is. And I think it's incredibly effective. It's also very nice in a concert to sort of change the sound world completely. I think, you know, to get away from the cello with bow and just have pizzicato. So, shall I play it? And
Please.
then we can talk more.
Wow, that's beautiful.
It's lovely, isn't it?
It
Yeah,
is.
such a kind of evocative piece.
Yeah, really conjures up a mood and seems very appropriate to this time of the evening too. Sort of
Yeah.
lovely, lovely
Very
sets of the mood.
trance-like state. Yeah.
You had your eyes closed for quite a bit of that, as if you'd sort of absorbed and memorized sections of it. It sort of adds to
Well,
the
some of the harmonics are so confusing because well, I find them confusing because they look lower than they sound. So I have to just remember the finger patterns rather than kind of watch the music. I find the music confusing. Sorry, Zoe, but I probably should play the whole thing from memory, and she'll tell me off for not doing that. But
Well, you performed it fantastically well. It's such a beautiful piece by Zoe. And if people would like to see a bit more of Zoe's work on our channel, Zoe was involved in one of our community commissions where we asked composers to go and meet members of the public, individuals and also groups who were particularly playing a role in lockdowns or supporting people through the difficult last few months. And then having met them, write a piece of music that either celebrates them or marks a moment. We had a piece written for a school class group. We had a piece written for an isolated, a woman who was isolated at home and couldn't get out. We had a piece written, and Zoe went to a food bank and wrote a piece for one of the workers there, met him and wrote a piece. So that's on our channel under the title of Community Commissions if you want to find out about that. The next piece is by Simon Holt, again a composer who has had a long history with the Sinfonietta. We commissioned him to write Kites, which I think was one of the early of his commissions for Sinfonietta in 1983. He's written other pieces since. Most recently, we played a piece in St John Smith Square called Fool is Hurt, which is a piccolo and ensemble work, which some of you might have been at when we were doing those concerts at St John's when the Queen Elizabeth Hall was closed. I think Simon's actually with us in our in this closed group of viewers online. So hi, Simon. It's nice to know you're here. I remember too one of the first projects that we did abroad that I was working for the Sinfonietta for was in Madrid. And Sueños, which was written in 2007 by Simon, was performed at the Reina Sofia Concert Hall in the middle of Madrid. A concert hall which struck me at the time, and still is, no doubt, an absolutely fabulous acoustic to play in. I mean, I was amazed at the sound that hall has, and I've often enjoyed conversations with people of the sometimes vexed subject of halls and acoustics. That certainly is one that is stunningly vivid in terms of the listening experience. Tim, you must have your favourites. Do you have a favourite hall that you like playing in, that when you know it's coming up, you kind of go, I can't wait?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are one or two, surprisingly, in London. I mean, the Wigmore Hall is a fantastic hall. I think Sinfonietta has played in there occasionally, but I like King's Place too, actually. I think that's very good. You know, obviously the main hall there has a very sort of bright acoustic. Obviously these are kind of smaller halls. I guess in this country you'd have to go to Birmingham for a really great concert hall. That's the nearest one. No offence to the Barbican or the South Bank. But I think that's, you know, it's been so beautifully designed, and certainly as an orchestral player, you know, I've been there with in my other guys as an orchestral principal. It's such a wonderful place to play. You know, it's you just don't have to force the lines at all. You know, everything is so clear and so resonant. It's really great.
Wonderful. So Feet of Clay by Simon is a 12-minute work for solo cello. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, this is music which I love this piece. It explores extremes, I suppose. Very loud, incredibly soft, very high, and also incredibly low. So I'll just play that. I hope I'm not giving the game away. But he asks, I'm using a different cello for this. He asks me to tune down the C string to a low C sharp. So we've got, which is an incredible sound. It sounds like a sort of double bass. And so I know I'm giving this away, Simon, so forgive me. But it's a kind of shock at the end, because you don't hear this string at all until the very end. And then suddenly you get this sense of desolation. But it's music, I think, which really speaks so powerfully. It's uncompromising music, which I really like, as sort of in the mold of Xenakis in a way. And it conjures up kind of biblical landscapes, is the only way I can put it, I think. You know, so just the best way of listening to it is just shut your eyes and let your imagination go. That's it.
Oh, Tim.
That's one of the times when you miss a concert. Sorry, guys.
Swapping cellos too.
You kind of think,
well done.
Anybody there?
Simon, if you're still with us, many congratulations for that. Thank you so much for it. On behalf of Tim and the audience, if we were in a live setting, you'd be walking up to the stage right now, hopefully to take the applause. But we should also thank your page donor, Tim.
Yes, my lovely daughter, here she is. Also a very wonderful cellist too. So I even trusted her to pick up the cello and give it to me.
It's a team effort. We're getting close to the end of the time allocated. You've got one more short piece to play by Eleanor Alberger to play us out. But before we do, there's one more question that came in from Susan Sturrock, which is, I suppose, looking forward to the time when we can return to normal and visit concerts. She asks, I don't suppose you have time to attend many concerts, of course, but who would you not want to miss if they were performing in London?
Oh gosh, I should have prepared these answers to these questions. There are so many wonderful players. I don't know. I can't answer that. I'm really sorry. Give me a chance to think about it.
Okay. Well, if you have an answer, you can feed it back to Susan afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry.
So we don't detain our guests too much. Too much over 7 o'clock. I should just say thank you, Tim, to you before we play the last piece. It's been a real joy to have this time in your home, hearing you play, and I'm sure I would be saying on behalf of everybody how much we appreciate your musicianship and what you do as a player, and of course for the Sinfonietta. I should thank all of you for turning up tonight and being with us live. It does add a tremendous zest to these things to know people are actually out there in their homes listening live, and thank you for those of you who contributed questions. I should thank Sir Stephen Oliver too, who's logged on here, who supports Tim in his role as a cellist by being his principal partner. Thank you, Stephen. And I hope very much to all of you whose names I recognise from this list that we are meeting again in person soon at one of our concerts, enjoying the power of the Sinfonietta and the virtuosity of its musicians playing live. And we wish you well for these last few weeks of what we hope will be these last few weeks of lockdown. And we look forward to a return to some sort of normality. But to play us out, Tim, you've got one more short piece by Eleanor, who's a friend of yours, and is something you wanted to feature at the end of the concert.
Absolutely. I thought I'd play something lighter after the weight and power of all that. This is a lovely little piece written for Robert Irvine, the Scottish cellist, by Eleanor, who's a very good friend of mine and wonderful composer. She was featured in the last night of the proms, and she's just, I think, written a new violin concerto for her husband, Tom Bowes. Great music, so full of colour. This is based on a Jamaican folk song, and she comes from Jamaica, and in fact, Tom sent me a recording of her playing with the Jamaican folk singers, this very folk song, with her playing on the guitar. It's called Ride Through, and it's very light-hearted, whimsical, and full of joy. I hope you enjoy it.
And just before you play, Tim, just to say goodnight to everybody, because Simon Holt has just chipped in and said, tremendous performance, Tim. Thank you very much. Stunning.
Great. Thanks,
thank you both. Yes, we've enjoyed it tonight very much. And thank you, Tim, again. And we'll play out with this. And when we finish, we'll sign off and hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you.